not heard from the Trump campaign. Vice President Biden agreed.
We're going to talk about our obligations to one another, how we benefit when we help one another. Ending poverty will not just be an aspiration. It will be a theory of change to build a new economy that includes everyone.
Vice President Biden, we are glad to welcome you on behalf of thousands, literally millions of people who are part of this movement. As you can see, we are people from every walk of life, whether it be Kansas farmers or fast food workers in the Carolinas, indigenous people, Latino people, people from the Midwest, the Northwest, the Far West. We are here. And we know that even in states with the history of voter suppression, the coming together of poor and low wealth people, this segment of voters around issues could break through and could certainly even break through in the Solid South, could create a new voting bloc in this country. And they are listening to hear from you tonight, and we thank you for joining us. Following you, we will then begin to talk about our plan and have lawyers to come on and talk about our protections. But we first want to hear from you about your proposals to address the issues of poor and low wealth people. God bless you, my friend.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I just want to thank you all. I understand Wanda Lakin and Reverend Leo. I want to thank you. I understand you spoke. I couldn't hear you. But Bishop, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for your friendship and your fellowship. You know, Reverend Theo Harris and Reverend Jackson, and to all of you joining us tonight, I'm humbled to be with you. My daughter, who is a full-time social worker, is part of your effort, and can't be here tonight because she's visiting a very sick friend who has a kidney replacement. But I just want you to, her name is Ashley, and Reverend, she's anxious to meet you. Look, together we can carry on Dr. King's Poor People's Campaign. It's based on a simple moral truth that we're all created in the image of God, and everyone's entitled to be treated with dignity and respect. My dad used to say, Joey, a job and a place in the community is a lot more than about a paycheck. It's about dignity. It's about respect. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say it's going to be okay. So many people today can't say that or do that. So many people have made the walk that my father had to make up a short flight of stairs back when things were going. He lost his job in Scranton, Pennsylvania years ago when I was a third grader, and said, you got to stay with your grandpa. It's going to be about a year. I'll come back every weekend. It's only 157 miles, Joey. I couldn't imagine what it was like going down asking my grandfather whether or not we could all stay there, including my mom. What a difficult thing that must have been. But look, everybody, a lot of people have been awful close. We got out of it. We lived in what is equivalent of now Section 8 housing for a while, but it took 5 years. My dad finally got us through. My generic point is everybody's felt any taste of this lack of respect, taste of this lack of opportunity, taste of being poor, taste of what it feels like, understands what you're doing, Bishop. You know, we've discussed how that moral truth animates the founding documents as you call them, the founding documents. The founding covenants is your phrase. And we're always talked about the work left undone to make real the promise of how too often our politics doesn't speak enough to the 140 million people who live in poverty, struggling paycheck to paycheck in the wealthiest nation on earth, scared to death. I can remember my dad going to sleep at night, and I could hear him just rolling back and forth in bed because he didn't have any health insurance, wondering what in God's name happens if he gets sick. I watched it on his face, you know. But at your forum last year, during Holy Week this past April, I promised you that we'd not only talk about it, but we'd do something about it together. And I want to be part of your movement. That's why I'm here tonight. All of you remind me of how Scripture describes a calling born out of the wilderness, a calling to serve, not to be served, a calling toward justice, healing, hope, not hate. You know, to speak the good news and followed by some good deeds. It's not just enough to speak the good news, but good deeds. You know, and here we are with the nation in the wilderness right now, a public health crisis that's killed nearly 200,000 of our loved ones, friends, neighbors, innocent souls, mostly people in the poor community who've been exposed, who have no place to hide. And that number is growing. An economic crisis that puts tens of millions of you out of work, facing eviction, living on the edge. Living on the edge. I mean, what's going to happen when you have to pay that rent if you're lucky enough to be in a place where you have a safe place to live? Together, these crises have ripped the blinders off the systemic racism that still plagues this country and denies so many of you the ability to reach your God-given potential. You know, and the inequities that existed, they existed long before things got much worse now. But they've existed for a long time. You know, where those at the top see things going up, but those in the middle and below see things getting worse. And we have leaders who bear false witness, who want us to believe that our country isn't gone off track, just as we face historic divergence in every way of life. But what does it mean if the stock market soars as families teeter on the brink of hunger and homelessness? You all see these lines, these for food lines, people lining up just to get some bread, milk, food. Or when we must take care of one another in a crisis and those in power say, cut unemployment benefits so that those who cannot find work or work safely can't pay their bills, put food on the table, even proposing to cut the SNAP program, defund Social Security, eliminate Obamacare in the middle of a pandemic, reopen our schools without the resources or the guidance they need to do it safely. It's estimated to cost $20 billion to open our schools safely. So we can have sanitary conditions, they can be sanitized, so we can have smaller classes, more teachers, people with masks, whether you're black, white, Latino, or Asian American, Native American. But those in power want to sow division among us. You know, that's what we don't all want to see. They say we're all different. We don't want the same things, but we do. You want a decent shot. My dad used to say, Joey, I'm not looking for a hand. I'm looking for an opportunity. I don't expect the government to solve my problems, but I expect them to at least understand it. Everyone wants a shot at a good job, good health, safety for your kids and your communities. But the folks out there now want to separate us by race, by neighborhood, by faith, so they turn against one another. Forget how strong we are when we take care of one another. When we're together, there's nothing we can't do. But we will never do that. If I'm president, that's never going to happen. We're going to talk about our obligations to one another, how we benefit when we help one another. Ending poverty will not just be an aspiration. It will be a theory of change to build a new economy that includes everyone, where we reward hard work. We care for the most vulnerable among us. We unleash the potential of all our children and protect the planet, which is the victim of global warming. And so we can live on. And where we build a country where you don't just survive, but you're able to thrive and grow. It starts by containing the virus, by providing all the PPE, the safety measures, through masking, social distancing, testing and tracing, preparing for a vaccine that's free, and any cost associated with COVID is paid for free. It's bringing people together and delivering real, immediate economic relief to those who need it most, for rentals, for food, for unemployment assistance, for those in the gig economy being able to get unemployment assistance, to those who are fortunate enough to be able to have started school but have this horrendous debt of student loans. Get small business support to folks who have great ideas and are successful as anyone else if they have a chance. To aid the schools and the state government so first responders can stay on the job. It's building an economy that eases the financial burdens of your family, that feel the squeeze of raising your kids and caring for an aged loved one. I don't know where some of these guys have ever been, what it's like to look at your kid and realize you don't have enough to get them the right clothes. I remember my dad used to say, well, look, we can't get shoes this week, but, in a month we'll have payday. You just put that cardboard in the bottom of the shoe. It means things it's about people's pride and dignity as well. It means a minimum of $15 an hour wage, paid sick leave for everybody. Healthcare that isn't about keeping you from getting less sick. It actually helps you stay healthy. And education. Look, right now in Title I, school districts that don't have much of an income, that they don't have much of a tax base, making sure we triple the Title I funding from $15 billion a year to $45. That would allow us to pay teachers to stay in those schools. It would allow us to put school psychologists and school nurses and school social workers in the school to help these kids get through. Providing preschool free, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds going to school. Every single study shows of the last 10 years from the great universities. No matter what the background, no matter what your zip code, if a kid gets to go to school at age 3, school, not daycare, school, they have a 58% better chance of making it all the way through 12 years of school without any problems. Where low and middle income families won't spend more than 7% of their income for child care under the age of 5. Look, think of all the women you know. I was a single dad, and I had my wife and daughter were killed in an automobile accident. My 2 sons almost died in that accident. They were 3 and 4 years old. I had a great job. I was a senator making $42,000 a year, more money than I ever made before in my life. And guess what? I couldn't afford child care, but for my sister and my brother and my mother. Where there's free tuition, if you can you make it through those early years. Free tuitions at colleges and universities, qualified credentialed programs, so that the debt never again blocks a path to pursue a chosen career for you and your family. Housing that's affordable so that you can rent it, so no one ever has to pay more than 30% of whatever their income is, and there's no homelessness. You get housing, period. It should be a right as well as health care. Gives working families a fair opportunity to own their own home so they can create a basis for generating some wealth. That's how most middle-class families made it in their homes. Give first-term home buyers a $15,000 tax credit so they can, in fact, have a down payment if that's what they're able to do. Protect you from the environmental hazards and gun violence. And end the scourge of redlining and homelessness. We can do this. It's within our power to do it. We cannot afford to fail to do it. Historic investments that lift up all communities so we can fill the potholes in your streets and cracks in your sidewalk, fix the street lights, install needed broadband just as your children are trying to learn from home so you have the equipment and have the computer capability to do it. Demolish the blighted properties and create safe spaces to live and work and play safely. Environmental justice so we can turn the faucet on and drink water, breathe clean air. I'm sorry, I'm about to end, but we have to live we have to just give people a chance. And finally, it's protecting our sacred right to vote, the great equalizer in our democracy, the reason you all are together tonight. Our late friend John Lewis, and he was a friend, said, freedom is not a state, it's an act. It's an act. And he always channeled this gospel hymn that guides us today. The gospel hymn goes like this, and you've all heard it. I don't feel no way tired. I've come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave. All of you have the freedom and the power to act, to vote. Just keep the faith, because I promise you, I'll restore the dignity for everyone, especially the poor. Every time I'd walk out of my grandpa's house up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, he used to yell, "Joey, keep the faith." And my grandmother yelled, "No, Joey, spread it." We got to spread the faith because everyone is entitled to have some dignity. I want to thank you, and I'm sorry to go over, Bishop, but I want to God bless you and all you do, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.
Vice President Biden, we want to thank you, first of all, for coming on and talking policy to this large contingency of people. I want you to know there was a little tech difficulty because there were 10 people, black, white, indigenous, Latino, women, men, farmers, fast food workers, who greeted you before you came on, and they wanted you to hear their story and their voice. And we're going to ask your staff to make sure you see that. Because one of the things about this campaign, we're trying to make sure that we understand the full breadth of what we mean when we say poverty and low wealth, and why we have to address the interlocking injustices of systemic racism, systemic poverty, ecological devastation, the war economy, and the false narrative of religious nationalism. We also are glad that you said one thing before you leave, and that is that the language of investment. We know from our economists that $15 an hour would pump over $300 billion into the economy. We know from our public health, specialists that work with us from UCLA, from Harvard, and Drexel have told us that in addition to changing policies, if you're going to deal with COVID, you have to address the fissures caused by systemic racism and systemic poverty. And we want you to know that 140 million poor and low wealth people before poverty, and we say poor and low wealth because we look at, as you said, those who are $400 away from an economic disaster. That's 66 million white people. That's 26 million black people, even though that's 61% of all black people. It's millions of Latinos, Asians, Natives. It's us. It's us. And all of us have to rise now. Before you came on, we talked about a song, we didn't play it, and it says, "It's not the waking, it's the rising." And it's time for us to indeed rise. We thank you for talking policy. We thank you for speaking directly to poor and low wealth people all over this country. There are tens and tens of reporters on from everywhere, and thousands and thousands and thousands. Last time we did this, 3 million people viewed, so I don't even know what the numbers are tonight. But thank you so much for joining us tonight, and God bless you.
Reverend, we owe you big. We owe you. Keep it going. God love you.